July 7, 2017. San Francisco International Airport, just after 11 at night. An Air Canada jet carrying 95 passengers and 5 crew members is seconds from landing. But it isn't lined up with the runway. It's lined up with a taxiway, where 4 fully loaded passenger jets are sitting, fueled, waiting their turn for takeoff. In the next 4 seconds, this airplane is about to come closer to causing the deadliest accident in American aviation history than almost anyone outside the industry ever found out. Here's what you're about to see. How a routine night landing turned into the closest call in modern aviation. How a single, alert pilot on the ground may have stopped a catastrophe. And why, right now, in 2026, the exact same warning signs are showing up again at airports across the country. Flight 759 had taken off from Toronto, a routine transcontinental run pilots fly without a second thought. As it descended into San Francisco that night, runway 28 right, the one it was cleared to land on, was dark. Closed for construction, its lights switched off. Right next to it ran taxiway C, lit up in a pattern that, from a cockpit at night, looked almost identical to a runway. The crew lined up, descended, configured for landing. Nothing in front of them looked wrong, because their eyes were matching what they expected to see, not what was actually there. On the taxiway below, 4 jets sat nose to tail, engines idling, full of passengers and fuel. The pilot of the first one in line happened to glance up. He saw landing lights, getting bigger, getting brighter, lined up directly with him. He kept watching, waiting for the aircraft to correct. It didn't. He grabbed his radio and called the tower, asking where this incoming jet thought it was going. In the tower, one controller was working 2 jobs at once, managing both the runway and the taxiways on a single combined frequency, a routine practice late at night when traffic is light. By the time the question registered, Air Canada Flight 759 was already below 200 feet, descending toward 4 planes that had nowhere to go. At 59 feet, roughly the height of the tail of the very aircraft it was about to hit, the crew finally saw it. They slammed the throttles forward and pulled up, clearing the jets below. By a margin, investigators would later struggle to even calculate safety. The plane circled back and landed normally on the actual runway. Nobody on board ever knew how close they'd come. It took 2 days for anyone to formally report what had happened. By then, the cockpit voice recorder had already recorded over itself, erasing the conversation between the pilots in those final seconds. Investigators were left piecing together one of the most serious near collisions in decades, using nothing but data and a handful of radio calls. If stories like this are new to you, that's exactly why this channel exists. We go into the moments aviation usually doesn't talk about. Subscribe now, because next, I'm showing you the actual system that's supposed to catch a mistake like this, before it ever gets this close, and why, that night, it almost didn't. Every commercial aircraft carries a system called TCAS, a traffic collision avoidance system. It listens constantly for signals from every other aircraft nearby, and if 2 planes get too close in the air, it tells both pilots.
TCAS scans the airspace to prevent airborne collisions.
Independently, whether to climb or descend. It has prevented collisions you've never heard about, simply because it worked. But TCAS couldn't have saved Flight 759, because the danger wasn't another plane in the sky. It was a plane on the ground, lined up with the wrong strip of pavement. That's called a runway incursion, when an aircraft, vehicle, or person ends up somewhere on an airport's protected surface that they're not supposed to be. And around every aircraft near an airport, the FAA maintains what amounts to an invisible safety bubble, sometimes a few miles wide at altitude, shrinking down to just a few thousand feet close to the ground. Anything that crosses into that bubble without clearance counts as a reportable incident. What actually failed that night was something harder to fix with a switch or a sensor, a glitch in human perception called expectation bias. The pilots had landed at that airport before. Their brains had a mental picture of what runway 28 right was supposed to look like, lit up a certain way every night. That night, the picture was different. The runway was dark, the taxiway was lit, but their minds filled in the gap with the memory instead of what was actually in front of them. It's the same reason experienced drivers occasionally miss a stop sign they've passed 1,000 times without incident, until the one time it matters. This is why aviation doesn't rely on any single layer of protection. It stacks them. Instruments, lighting standards, air traffic control, pilot training, and, most importantly, other human beings paying attention and willing to speak up, the way that one captain on the taxiway did. So, why does this keep happening? And why is it happening more right now? A federal review of FAA and NASA safety data found at least 46 close calls involving commercial airliners in a single month alone. And runway incursions are now 25% more frequent than they were just a decade ago. Behind that number is a staffing crisis that started during the pandemic. Air traffic control towers lost experienced controllers faster than they could be replaced. And even as flying rebounded to record levels, staffing never fully caught up. Controllers are working longer hours, covering combined frequencies more often, with less margin for the one distracted moment that can change everything. This isn't a hypothetical risk anymore. In January of 2025, a regional jet collided with a military helicopter approaching Washington's Reagan National Airport. And, unlike Flight 759, no one walked away. Just over a year later, in March of 2026, another regional jet crashed at LaGuardia, an airport with its own long, documented history of near misses between aircraft and ground vehicles stretching back decades, warnings that kept appearing in safety reports without ever forcing the kind of change that might have prevented what came next. That's the pattern hiding underneath stories like Flight 759. A near miss isn't an isolated scare. It's a warning, delivered for free, about a weakness in the system that hasn't been fixed yet. Ignore enough of those warnings for long enough, and eventually one of them stops being a near miss. Flight 759 got a second chance because one pilot on the ground refused to look away, and one crew in the air reacted in the 4 seconds they had left. Not every airport gets that same luck. Not every warning gets heard in time. If you want more of this, real investigations, real systems, no exaggeration, just what actually happened and why, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because next time, we're going inside a flight that didn't get a second chance.